Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're trying to streamline your academic writing, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to transform what is honestly the most stressful, last-minute part of any essay, Harvard referencing, into a simple, totally stress-free process. We're going to decode the rules step by step. But right off the bat, I gotta ask, are you needlessly throwing away hard-earned grades because of tiny formatting errors in your bibliography? You spend literally weeks researching, structuring arguments, and writing, only to bleed points at the finish line because of a rogue comma or a misplaced bracket. It's the worst, right? Well, think of the rules we're about to cover not as annoying hurdles, but as practical, powerful tools to protect your academic success. All right, here's our roadmap for today. First, what exactly is Cite Them Right? Then, we'll walk through a step-by-step citation guide, tackle citing multiple authors, navigate secondary sources, and wrap up with digital tools and EndNote. Section 1. What is Cite Them Right? So, while Harvard referencing is used all over the globe, Cite Them Right isn't just some generic catch-all term. It's a highly specific standard. Since there is no single central authority for general Harvard style, major institutions, like Newcastle University for example, rely on this exact style sheet to keep everything perfectly consistent and avoid accidental plagiarism. When a professor asks for Cite Them Right, they want this precise, externally published rulebook.
And here's the visual giveaway that sets it apart. While generic Harvard variations might leave dates floating around or use square brackets, Cite Them Right has a strict, non-negotiable rule. You absolutely must surround both your publication dates and your online access dates in round parentheses, just standard round brackets. It's a tiny detail, I know, but it is the absolute signature of this specific style.
Moving on to Section 2, Step-by-Step Citation Guide. Now, here's the foundational blueprint every beginner has to master. Honestly, once you get these two moving parts, everything else falls right into place. Because referencing is basically a two-part dance. Step 1 is your in-text citation. That's the brief little indicator you drop right into the body of your text, inside round brackets, showing the author, year, and page number if you're quoting directly. Then Step 2 is your reference list entry at the very end of your document. These two pieces have to link up perfectly so your reader can spot the name in a paragraph, flip to the back, and instantly find the full details.
Let's break down the anatomy of that final reference list entry. You've got to pay close attention to the punctuation here. Start with the author's surname and initial, followed by the year in those crucial round brackets we talked about. Next up is your title, which literally has to be in italics. Also keep an eye on capitalization. Use sentence case for book and article titles, meaning only the first word and proper nouns get a capital letter. Finally, finish it off with the edition, place of publication, and publisher.
All right, Section 3, Citing Multiple Authors. This is, hands down, one of the most common places students trip up, mostly because the rules literally change depending on how many people wrote the piece. So here's the logic. If you've got 1 to 3 authors, you list them all out, separating the final two with the fully spelled out word and. But when you hit 4 or more authors, things shift. Your text would get way too cluttered listing 5 or 6 names, right? So, Cite Them Right wants you to use the Latin abbreviation et al., which just means and others. The big rule to remember here is that for 4 or more authors, you only write the first author's name followed by et al. And check the formatting closely. The et al. Has to be in italics with a full stop right after the al. Oh, and a massive golden rule for Cite Them Right. Never, ever use the ampersand symbol. You know, the little squiggly and sign. Always spell out the word and. Sticking to that keeps your formatting totally flawless. Section 4. Navigating secondary sources.
So what happens when author A drops an absolutely brilliant quote from author B, but you just can't get your hands on author B's original book? Well, that is called secondary referencing. It's when you reference a primary source that you haven't read directly, but it was quoted or summarized in a secondary work you did read. Now, full disclosure, best practice is always to track down that original primary source yourself. But realistically, sometimes it's out of print, locked behind an expensive paywall, or in a language you don't speak. That's exactly when secondary referencing comes to the rescue.
You just need to use the exact phrasing required to be totally transparent with your reader. If you're paraphrasing an idea, use the phrase cited in, so it would look like Eccles 2002, cited in Wilson 2009. On the flip side, if you're using a direct, word-for-word quote, you gotta use quoted in, and make sure you include the page number of the book you're actually holding. And this is super important, so notice the stark contrast between your text and your final bibliography here. In the body of your essay, your citation mentions both the primary author and the secondary source. But at the very end of your paper in the reference list, you only include the full details of the secondary source, the book you actually held in your hands and read. Never list a primary source in your bibliography if you didn't personally read it. That is a huge academic faux pas.
Okay, Section 5, Digital Tools and EndNote.
Consider this next part your reward for mastering the core mechanics. Once you actually know the rules, you can safely let digital tools do the heavy lifting for you. There are some really fantastic generators out there. Tools like Cite This For Me, Scribr, MyBib, and robust software like EndNote. They are massive time savers. But here's the catch. They are basically robots. They don't magically know your specific university's rulebook, and they absolutely can get confused. You have to know the rules yourself to spot their mistakes.
A perfect example of this is EndNote. It is incredibly powerful, but by default, it often just spells out all the author names in the final reference list, no matter how many there are. But as we've just learned, the Cite Them Right rule is to use at all for 4 or more authors. So if you're using EndNote, you've got to manually update your settings or double-check your final output to make sure it strictly follows that 4-author rule. Don't let a silly default setting ruin your perfect formatting.
So, we're back to the question that started it all. Are you going to let a misplaced comma steal your hard-earned grades? Look, referencing isn't just some boring formatting chore. It's genuinely your way of proving you belong in the global scholarly conversation. Master it, and you'll bulletproof your assignments. Are you going to let your citations control you, or are you ready to take control of your citations? Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.